I think that letting children be who they are, letting youth be who they are, can coexist with having an academic program. I think it just means that we're really aware of how we treat children, because once they get labeled that way, it's really hard for them to unthink that about themselves. I don't think we should focus on management as our primary focus, but I also don't think we should let it go.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Talk with YouZai with Dr. Tran again. I'm Jing Wen. I'm currently working in an independent school in New York as a second grade teacher.
Hi, I'm Miranda. I'm currently working in a public school in New York City as a fifth grade teacher. I know that you shared a lot about the spirits that you want to keep in early childhood education. So one thing I'm thinking is that in a more constrained space like elementary school or middle school or high school, when we do have the academic expectations and curriculum there, how can we still let the kids still be themselves? How can we keep their spirits in general?
That's a very good question, and that's a question that people frequently ask me because I think, this perspective that seems very unreasonable or that seems very idealistic. I think that letting children be who they are, letting youth be who they are, can coexist with having an academic program. I think it just means that we're really aware of how we treat children, right? So that we understand that children are people who also make mistakes, who are trying to be social beings. They come to school, crave social relationships, right? And moments of connection and belonging. I happen to think that that's foundational to learning. I think there's way too much punishment in school, way too much of a behavioral modification and punishment. And it doesn't need to be that way, because why are we punishing children for things that don't really matter? This space that really isn't conducive to belonging, play, that if you don't have a safe environment where you feel a sense of belonging or feel any sense of connection, then you're not motivated to do well. We allow for children to express themselves in the ways that they do. It's not hard to remove those systems of punishment, to remove the systems of always judging children. You're a good student, you're a bad student. Because once they get labeled that way, it's really hard for them to unthink that about themselves. Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot of work to shift our usual systems of punishment and tracking and judgment, because teachers are sort of trained to judge, right? We're trained to assess instead of training to observe in order to see what else we can do to support children. We should look at schools where children are happy and children are engaged and come to school and are well. And what are they doing? How do we support other schools to do the same, so that we can start to have this larger cultural shift around schools? Sometimes it feels impossible to me. It feels like, well, what's the point? Because we're never going to change. But I think teachers do have the opportunity to kind of make those moves in their own ways, mm-hmm. to let children feel a sense of being seen in good ways.
Remember something just happened last week when I was teaching reading group. Okay. One student was like, I hate reading and it's boring. I like reading my books, but I just don't like the class. Yeah. As a teacher, the first thing in my mind was redirecting the student. Yeah. But later, when I was reflecting myself, I tend to ask myself, why does children think in this way? And why does child think reading book is boring in the class? Mm-hmm. You've always talked about how adults impose their interpretation to children image, kind of hindering the children to express the real themselves.
I think that the ways we teach in school, it's not good. I have two friends who are 10 years old. They hate school. At least one of them really, really hates school. And she especially hates math. I don't want to blame it on their teachers, because their teachers are all, being asked to use this particular curriculum, right? Which is actually on the computer. Yes. A lot of their work is on the computer. They open up their laptops, and the other day they came over with their laptops to do homework. And they said, do I hate this thing, right? I hate this thing. What used to be fun for me, like a computer, is like the thing they hate, right? Because it's where they have to do these problems. They don't understand, why am I doing a division problem, right? Mm-hmm. I think math, science, all of those things can be so interesting, but we don't teach the interesting parts of it. In school, we just complete the thing.
Yeah.
And check it off. So I think changing also our pedagogy, right, changes the ways that we can approach school and leaves more room for kids to be able to share things and talk about things and talk about their ideas.
Sometimes school or the classroom can be a confined and constrained place for kids and also for the teachers too.
Yeah.
It's difficult when you also have to play the role and follow that standard or curriculum being placed on you.
We take these things for granted because that's how we did it. That's how we were taught. We don't have to do it that way. We can still follow the curriculum, but teach it differently. Teach children why. Why is this important? And not just, oh, it's important because usually I hear you're going to work one day and you need to know this to be able to find a job. That's not going to motivate anybody. Kids aren't thinking about their job one day. They're thinking about right now. They're so much more present-minded than we are as adults. We're somehow much more future-oriented, right? As we get older. I wish we knew that when we were young. So we then become, you should know that because I know it now and it helped me. And that we need to realize they're not going to think about their job later. They're thinking about right now.
I found that a lot of my students' social emotional needs are actually on their way of academic learning. So I always wonder if particularly focusing on social emotional development during early learning may help them reduce those barriers later. Is there any way that teachers and parents can work together to foster students' curiosity and their resilience and emotional well-being?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably predictable that I would say being in relationship is a social emotional tool. That's what I encourage with what we encourage teachers to do here. Spend time talking to each other, spend time with each other. Because I think when we get outside of our usual spaces and our usual routines, we discover something new about ourselves, something new about each other. I mentioned it in the conversation with Callie that we spend a lot of time developing the social emotional part of children here. We don't specifically say that, but it's at the core of what we do. Helping them socially connect and then helping them also understand other people's feelings and not in a school way. So thinking about, okay, what are tools that actually would be authentic for them to use, depending on their level of communication, their level of emotionality or their sociality. I think those kinds of interventions that we typically do in classrooms are good as long as they don't just become tools for us to make sure that this child doesn't interrupt the lesson, that they're actually in the service of having the child feel well. Hold it together so much. It's like to try to hold that role of being a teacher. Oh, this is what I think a teacher should be, and I need to hold myself in that way the whole day, and it's exhausting. So thinking, how do we let go of that so that we can be in an authentic relationship with each other?
What I get from what you just said is, instead of using the tools to help the teachers for the classroom management, think about how can those tools really help the kids.
Yes.
I also have one more question that kind of build on this one, which is that in classroom, especially for new teachers, administrators will typically evaluate a new teacher by looking at how well you can manage the class.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so do you consider that maintaining a certain level of order in classroom necessary for successful learning, or do you think that we should not care about it at all, or we should really focus on managing?
I don't think we should focus on management as our primary focus, but I also don't think we should let it go and just have everybody, I think that it's not just individuals, it's a community and a collective space for everybody to be able to do whatever they want. So it's balancing the community's needs with the individual needs and trying to develop. I think the classroom environment, the way that we set up our classrooms, is really important for that, right? We're having to provide spaces for children who might need something different. And part of the curriculum at Read a Gold is thinking about the classroom environment and the materials that we have and where we put things and how that changes the ways children interact with each other in the space. The only thing is I don't like to call it management. I would rather it be a way of social emotional curriculums.
And never feel afraid to tell a student your true feelings.
Yeah. Yes. I have said many times, that is so annoying. If we are really do think of them as human, we should not be afraid. I say, I need a break from you right now. So I'm going to go over here. You can stay, you can do whatever you want, but I just need a break. So please don't talk to me for the next 5 minutes. And let's make repair once I feel better. So they know that you're human.
Working with students from upper grades can be hard because they're entering the stage of puberty and there's a lot of things going on in their heads. Sometimes it can be difficult, but sometimes I do feel like we're all human beings and we all have our own struggles. And I also have a chat box in my class where they can just drop me a note to share with me something they want to tell us. And most of the time, they would just tell me, oh, please take this student out of the class, or I'm so annoyed by someone. But like sometimes I do also get notes like, Miss Miranda, I hope you're not having a bad day.
Oh,
or like,
I love that.
They're very sweet. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
and those notes about, the friend that irritates you actually could help you with planning groups later.
Yeah, definitely. Like arranging a new sitting for them.
Yeah, exactly. Kids who are like going into puberty or whatever it is, to me they're just like toddlers, but they have lots of feelings and very few avenues and ways to express those feelings. There's a lot going on in those bodies, a lot of hormones. Like we can't discount the fact that their bodies are changing and it hurts. It actually literally like emotionally hurts, physically hurts. Those growing pains, toddlers are also, their teeth are growing in or whatever it is, or their bodies are growing. And I really think of them as toddlers, which makes me more patient with them because I know there's a lot going on that they're thinking about. It's not just school. The force of adulthood is strong. When children are young, we are always getting them to think about when they're bigger. It's that future orientation that we have. But we constantly are telling them when you get bigger, when you're a big girl, when you're in kindergarten, when you're in the, when you go to high school, when you get a job, always, like it's always the next thing. The force of adulthood is strong in that once we become adults, it's over, right? Like we don't have childhood again. We repeat the same thing that happened to us, to children. I also think we all have our children inside of us. We're all still 6-year-olds or 16-year-olds who listen to sad, depressing music or like,
getting very emotional in midnight.
Yeah, exactly, right. Having a crush or whatever it is, right?
Thank you so much for
it was great talking to you too, and to Callie too.
Thank you.